Stop acting poor, my mother said, lips curling as she folded the ivory invitation in half. You're the responsible one. 15,000 is nothing for you, just pay for your brother's wedding and be done with it. My brother chuckled without looking up from his phone. Yeah, sis. Don't kill the vibe. It's one night. My night. The words slid under my skin like a cold blade. I tasted metal, the way you do when you bite back what you really want to say. The chandelier hummed above us. The dining table smelled faintly of lemon oil and old promises. A silk runner, a bowl of fake orchids, and 3 people who knew exactly how to make love feel like a ledger. Hy everyone, my name is Myra Hale, and I learned to survive by making a home inside my silence. You'd think money was the argument. It wasn't. Money was just the language they preferred for humiliation. Every story in our house had a receipt stapled to its heart. I'm not paying, I said, voice level, like a surgeon choosing a scalpel. I love you, but my answer is no. My mother scoffed. Love? If you loved this family, you'd do this. Your father did everything for you, your school, your rent, your first car. That car was in Dad's name, I replied softly. And I made every monthly payment. She waved a lacquered hand, dismissing facts the way some people swat dust. 15,000, Myra. It's tradition. Tradition. In our family, tradition had always meant I set myself on fire so everyone else could toast marshmallows. I pictured the flaming stick arcing across the night, how sugar blisters before it browns. I pictured myself saying yes. Then I pictured the other thing, the thing that had kept me standing all these years, a door in my chest that opens to a room where I don't apologize. No, I repeated. Calm. Precise. Like a promise. There is a quiet that follows a woman's boundary, first disbelief, then insult, then the sudden rearrangement of faces. My brother finally looked at me. His smile thinned, like a string pulled too tight. You're dramatic, he said. Always were. I stood, sliding my chair in without a scrape, because even now I refused to leave marks they could point at later. I kissed my mother's cheek, cool, powdered, resistant, and I walked out. Outside, the air tasted like rain and copper. Inside my phone, a message lit up from my bank, suspicious activity detected. The screen showed my credit card, maxed, transactions stamped in the city where my mother was still finishing her tea. I stared at the numbers. Then, to my own surprise, I began to smile. Not hysteria. Not surrender. Something else. Something that sounded like the echo of a match being struck in a dark, familiar room. If this ever happened to you, say same in the comments. And I let it burn quietly, because I already knew where her flames would run out of oxygen. The laugh that slipped from my mouth was sharp, startling even me. Because what else could you do when the people who claimed to be family treated you like a personal ATM? But my laughter wasn't madness, it was recognition. The game had finally revealed itself, and I was done playing by their rules. I sat in my car outside the restaurant where we'd just had dinner, staring at the string of charges, florists, deposits, designer suits, champagne shipments. Each one like a knife cut from the account I had built with overtime hours, freelancing gigs, and sleepless nights. Every sacrifice of mine had been converted into someone else's confetti. My phone buzzed. A message from my brother. Thanks for finally doing the right thing. We knew you'd come around. The audacity. The sheer smugness of it nearly knocked the air from my lungs. I typed 3 words and hit send before I could think twice. You'll regret this. The words weren't empty. They carried the weight of years, of every whispered insult, every manipulation, every time my mother twisted gratitude into debt. They thought they had cornered me, but what they never understood was this. When you've already been burned to ashes, fire stops being frightening. That night I pulled every bank statement, every digital receipt, every email confirmation. My eyes burned under the lamplight, but my hands were steady. I wasn't planning on screaming at them or begging for repayment. I was building something colder, cleaner. Hours later, my phone rang. It was my sister, her voice trembling like a string about to snap. Myra, it's Mom. She's been locked out of the account. The venue just called, they can't process the rest of the payment. What's going on? I smiled at the ceiling. The pieces were already falling into place, and none of them even realized the ground had been cut from under their feet. Tell her, I said, my voice calm, that sometimes tradition skips a generation. And I hung up, leaving her panic echoing in the silence. The storm had only just begun. By morning, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree, 37 missed calls, 11 voicemails, and 2 frantic texts from my father, who normally never involved himself in the mess my mother created. I didn't answer any of them. I just brewed my coffee slow, let the steam rise, and listened to the quiet hum of my apartment. For once, silence felt like victory. But my mother wasn't a woman who accepted silence. By noon, she was pounding at my door. The peephole showed her in pearls and fury, her fist tightening around her handbag like it was a weapon. I opened the door only halfway. You embarrassed me, she hissed, voice quivering with outrage. The venue called, the florist called, everyone called me. Do you have any idea how humiliated I am? Her eyes flicked past me, scanning the apartment as if she could find the stolen money lying in piles across my floor. You cancelled everything. Why would you do that to your own family? For a moment, I almost laughed again. To her, I hadn't been robbed, I had committed treason. I didn't cancel anything, Mom, I said evenly. I just closed the accounts with my name on them. You drained me without asking. You wrote my signature on debts that were never mine. All I did was take my name back. Her mouth opened, then shut. For once, she didn't have a quick retort. Instead, her eyes filled with something sharper than anger, fear. What will people say? She whispered. The Mingles, the Ortegas, the whole community, they'll think we can't even pay for our son's wedding. And there it was. Not love. Not guilt. Reputation. The God she really served. You should have thought of that before you robbed me, I replied, pushing the door until only a sliver of light fell across her face. Her hand slapped against the wood. Myra. Don't do this to us. Think of your brother. But the lock clicked into place, sealing her out. For the first time, the roles had reversed. She was the one begging, and I was the one with silence on my side. I sipped my coffee. The taste was bitter, but it felt like freedom. By the third day, my brother showed up. Unlike my mother's pearls and poise entrance, he came with swagger, new suit jacket, designer shoes, and that grin he'd worn since childhood, the one that always promised he'd get away with whatever came next. He leaned against my doorway like it was a joke. Really, Myra? Canceling everything? You think this makes you powerful? I didn't invite him in. I stayed framed by the door, arms crossed, holding my ground. This isn't power, I said. It's boundaries. There's a difference. He smirked, pulling out his phone. You act like we don't know you. You've always been the fixer. You think you're cold, but give it a week. You'll cave. You always do. His confidence was a performance, but the crack in his voice betrayed him. I could hear the calls echoing through the speaker of his phone, vendors, planners, people demanding payments. His world, built on my stolen savings, was crumbling. Tell me, how does it feel? I asked quietly. To finally pay for something yourself. His grin faltered. You don't get it. This isn't just my wedding. It's our family's reputation. You ruin this, and you ruin all of us. I let his words hang there, watching him squirm. Reputation again. Always reputation. Never love, never fairness, never the years I bent until my spine almost broke to keep peace. I'm not ruining anything, I said. I'm just refusing to fund the ruin you've already chosen. His eyes hardened, his tone sharpening. If you don't undo this, Mom's ready to take legal steps. She says you've sabotaged the wedding deliberately. Do you really want this fight? There it was, the threat. My own family, prepared to drag me into court for money they stole. I almost pitied him. Almost. Tell Mom she can hire every lawyer she wants, I replied. But she can't erase the paper trail. Every charge is in her handwriting. Every forged signature is hers. For the first time in his life, my brother didn't have a comeback. He just stood there, chest rising and falling too fast, the shine of arrogance slipping. I closed the door slowly, leaving him in the hallway, finally stripped of his audience. It was nearly midnight when my sister called again. Her voice cracked through the speaker, half whisper, half sob, as if the walls around her might be listening. Myra, please. You don't understand. Mom's unraveling. She's calling everyone, threatening the vendors, even the church. And now Dad found out. I stayed silent, letting her words spill into the room. 4 years, she had been my mother's shadow, nodding along, laughing when I was mocked, staying neutral when I was bled dry. And yet tonight her tone was different, raw, stripped of its polish. She used Dad's retirement fund as collateral, my sister confessed. I overheard the argument. If the wedding falls through, he loses everything. His pension, the house, all of it. Myra, you have to fix this. I pressed my thumb against the edge of my mug, feeling the porcelain bite into my skin. Fix this. Always those 2 words, dropped into my lap like poisoned gifts. No, I said softly. Not this time. Myra, please, she begged. I don't care about the wedding anymore, but if Dad finds out she already drained your savings and now risked his, he'll walk out. He already packed a bag. Her panic was a mirror of every night I'd cried into my pillow, invisible to them all. The only difference? This time, she was the one staring into the void of loss. I warned her, I whispered. I told her no. She didn't listen. And you stood by and watched her steal from me. There was silence on the line. I could hear her breath hitch, her composure fracturing. You're enjoying this, she finally spat, but the words were fragile, almost childlike. I'm not enjoying it, I answered. But I won't bleed out just so she can wear pearls in public. If Dad leaves, that's on her, not me. She broke then, sobbing openly, the sound of someone who'd finally realized the empire wasn't built on love, it was built on theft and silence. I ended the call gently, setting the phone down like a stone in still water. For the first time, they were drowning without me. And I wasn't jumping in to save them. The rehearsal dinner was supposed to be a glittering preview of perfection, crystal glasses, polished cutlery, and my mother's carefully arranged smile. But when I walked in, uninvited, heads turned. Conversations hushed. My mother's face froze, then cracked into a performance grin so brittle it could have shattered with a whisper. Well, she announced loudly, her voice carrying across the hall. Look who decided to show up. Our reluctant benefactor. A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd, polite but sharp-edged. My brother smirked at the head table, clinking his glass against his fiancée's. It was theater, all of it. And I was meant to be the villain in their script. But what my mother didn't know was that I hadn't come to play her part, I'd come to end the show. Benefactor. I repeated, stepping forward. Funny word, Mom. Almost sounds like thief. Gasps punctured the air. The chandeliers above seemed to tremble as silence fell. My mother's smile faltered, but she pushed through it. Don't be dramatic. Families help each other. That's what you did. Out of love. I pulled a thin folder from my bag and laid it on the nearest table. Bank statements. Screenshots. Forged signatures in her handwriting. Evidence, neat and undeniable. The papers fanned out under the glow of the lights like cards in a magician's hand, except there was no illusion here. Out of love. I said quietly. This is what love looks like? Stealing from your own daughter to fund champagne fountains and a ballroom. Whispers erupted around us. My brother stood, face flushing crimson, the smile gone. My mother's fingers twitched at her pearls, but the facade was crumbling faster than she could rebuild it. This is slander, she snapped, voice shaking. You're destroying your brother's wedding, your family's name. I leaned closer, my voice low, steady, lethal. No, Mom. You destroyed it the moment you decided reputation was worth more than blood. The room shifted. Guests turned their eyes away, murmurs spreading like wildfire. My mother looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. For the first time, it wasn't me they pitied, it was her. I gathered the papers back into the folder, tucked it under my arm, and walked out. My heels echoed against marble floors, each step its own sentence. This ends now. By dawn, the empire cracked. My father showed up at my apartment, not with rage, not with excuses, but with a suitcase. His shoulders sagged beneath the weight of years spent covering my mother's sins, years of silent loyalty that had hollowed him out. She crossed the line this time, he said quietly, lowering himself into my kitchen chair. His hands trembled as he set down the papers he'd taken from her study. Contracts, loans, documents tying his retirement fund to vendors who were now circling like vultures. If I stay, she'll drag me under with her. For the first time in my life, I saw him not as the distant figure who always stood behind her, but as a man betrayed by the very woman he thought he was protecting. His eyes, usually cool and restrained, brimmed with something closer to grief than anger. "Dad," I whispered, "you don't owe her your life just because she wore your ring." He let out a long, ragged sigh. "Maybe not. But I owe you the truth. I knew what she was doing to you. I knew she used you like a lifeline, and I let it happen. Because it was easier to keep the peace." His confession burned hotter than any insult my mother had ever thrown. But it was also strangely freeing. The silence that had shackled us for years was finally broken. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed on the counter. It was my sister again, frantic. Her voice cracked through the line. "Myra, the police were at the house. The bank flagged Mom's transactions. Fraud, forgery, they've frozen the accounts. She's losing everything." I closed my eyes, letting her words settle. The collapse had begun, not by my hand but by the weight of her own choices. "She's begging you to come," my sister whispered. "She says only you can fix this." I looked at my father, his suitcase by the door, his weary eyes searching mine. For once, I didn't feel like the abandoned child. I felt like the one holding the final match. "I'll come," I said softly. "But not to save her." The house was quiet when I arrived, eerily so. The curtains were drawn, the air heavy with the stale perfume of roses gone sour. My mother sat in the living room surrounded by unopened envelopes, each one stamped with bold red letters, "Delinquent." "Final notice." Frozen. Her pearls were gone. Her makeup had run. She looked up at me, eyes hollow, lips trembling. For the first time, she wasn't a queen demanding tribute, she was just a woman cornered by her own greed. "Myra," her voice cracked, brittle as old glass. "You have to help me. Just this once. Fix it. Please. You're all I have." Those words should have healed something inside me, but instead they rang empty. Because all I have never included me, not when I was the child holding her tears at night, not when I was the scapegoat paying for silence, not when she drained my savings for my brother's crown. I had been a possession, not a daughter. I set the folder of evidence on the table. The bank already knows everything. The police too. The only choice left is yours, confess, or let them take it all piece by piece. She shook her head, sobbing. "They'll ruin us. The family name." "There is no family name left," I cut in, calm and cold. "Only the truth. And it was never mine to protect." My sister stood in the doorway, pale and trembling. My father lingered at the threshold, suitcase still in hand. For once, the stage wasn't mine. It was hers, my mother's, and all the masks she'd worn for decades had fallen. I turned to leave. At the door, I paused and spoke the last words she would ever hear from me as her daughter. "You taught me that family means debt. But I finally learned, love isn't a loan. And I don't owe you anything." Her sobs followed me down the hall, but they no longer held me. That night, I ate dinner at my own table, alone, in silence. One plate, one fork, one glass. The quiet was not emptiness. It was peace. I folded the napkin, placed it neatly aside, and whispered the only word that fit the end of our story.